Hello students, today we are going to talk about the important features of Indian Constitution. Now, the first feature which we are going to discuss is the lengthiest written constitution. Now, if I can talk about till January 2019, our constitution has 448 articles which are basically divided in 25 parts and the 12 schedules. Now the question arises, why we need to have such a lengthiest written constitution in the world? Certainly the reason was, since it was framed by the lawyers who certainly wrote things in very large amount of detail. So, since it was written by the lawyers, they certainly gave it a very extensive dimension, as there was a wide amount of detailing over the every article of the Indian Constitution. Secondly, since we are a country which is very diverse and multicultural, so the provisions needs to accommodate and include them too, so that our diversity is reflected and accommodated in the Indian Constitution. Thirdly, this is the entire constitution. The entire constitution covered the entire length and the breadth of the country. That is, there is no provision for the separate state constitutions in India. Hence, the provision for the state as well as the entire nation as a whole need to be provided in the one single constitution. Not only this, we have the administrative provisions which can be provided outside the constitution as in various other constitutions of the world, but we have these administrative provisions provided too in the constitution. So, briefly we can say it is these ideas which certainly made our constitution lengthy and one of the lengthiest in the world. Second, if we move on to see, our constitution is both rigid as well as the flexible constitution in the world. Now, what do we mean when we say rigid and flexible? When we say the rigid and flexible, it simply means that its rigidity should lie in it being not amendable easily. Not amendable easily. Now, what do I mean when I say not amendable easily? I simply mean that the provision for the amendment which is given in the Article 368 of the Indian Constitution, it simply speaks that we can amend the Constitution through the special majority, Now, first of all, what is a special majority? Special majority simply means that when any constitutional amendment is being discussed in the parliament, it needs to be passed by more than 50% of the total strength of the house and 2/3 of the members who are present and voting. Not only this, if the federal features of the constitution are amended, then there is a further strict provision where, apart from special majority, it also needs to be ratified by more than 50% of the states. So, these features certainly make our constitution rigid, but when we talk in other terms, that is flexibility, the flexibility of the constitution can certainly be reflected when we talk about the special majority provisions. There are certain provisions of the Indian Constitution which can simply be amended through the 50% of the members present and voting. 50% of the members present and voting. So, this constitutes a rigidity as well as a flexibility of the Indian Constitution. Now, moving on to the third point, talking about the nature of Indian polity, we can say it is federal with a unitary bias. Federal constitution with a unitary bias. Now, why we are saying this? We are saying this because we have the federal provisions in our Indian Constitution, and these federal provisions basically includes dual polity, that is dual government both at the center and the states, and the power being divided between the different tiers of government. So, it is dual polity, then supremacy of the constitution, supremacy of constitution, Then we have independent judiciary, independent judiciary. Then we have the features like bicameralism and many more. Similarly, we have the unitary features in the Indian Constitution, and those can be, if I can refer few of the features here, we have the single constitution, and unlike the other federal countries, we do not have the constitution separately for the state and the center. So, we have the single constitution, we have the provisions for the All India services, which ensures the quality and the delivery of the public service is same throughout the country. And these All India servants, certainly they are recruited and posted by the Ministry of Home Affairs, that is the center, but again they can be transferred and disciplinary proceedings can be initiated against them by the state government. Then we have the integrated judiciary, which again constitutes a unitary feature of Indian Constitution. Now, when I say we have integrated judiciary, I simply mean that judiciary implements both the center as well as the state laws, be it the High Court or be it the Supreme Court. The provisions where center appoints the state governors and these governors acting as an agents of union. So, definitely it is a unitary feature of the Indian Constitution. Then we have the emergency provisions where the administrative, legislative, as well as the executive authority of the state comes into the domain of the center, especially in case of the proclamation of emergency, that is the national emergency. So, we saw that the nature of Indian Constitution is both federal as well as unitary, where it is federal in the normal times and unitary in the extraordinary situations or circumstances. Then the next feature, salient feature of Indian Constitution is single citizenship. Now, when we talk about the single citizenship, it simply means that in India, we do not have the provision for the separate citizenship for the state or the center. We simply have a single citizenship, and that is an Indian citizenship. Unlike other federal countries like USA or Switzerland or Australia, we do not provide the separate citizenship, state citizenship. There is only one and the unique Indian citizenship. Next feature, next salient feature of Indian Constitution is universal adult franchisee. Now, post-independence, it was provided that anybody who is 21 years of age, irrespective of the caste, sex, religion or discrimination or any other such grounds, will be provided the right to vote. But again, by the 61st Constitutional Amendment Act, the voting right was extended to every individual who is of 18 years of age. Hence, it basically provided for voting right to larger number of the Indian citizens. The next salient feature of the Indian Constitution is the presence of independent bodies, which are clearly mentioned in the Indian Constitution. Now, when we talk about these independent bodies, first of all, we need to know what constitutes the independence of these bodies. Well, the point is their mode of appointment, how they are appointed, whether the method of their appointment is independent of the executive or not. Secondly, their tenure, their salary and the allowances, their promotion, transfer and postings. These all needs to be provided through an independent mechanism to ensure that these bodies certainly work in an independent manner. Now, if you look into the few bodies which are basically provided in the Indian Constitution it's like CAG, it's like Election Commission, UPSC. These bodies certainly acted as a bulwark of democratic system of the governance in India. Then moving on to the next point, which certainly constitutes a salient feature of Indian Constitution, we see. So the next point is parliamentary form of government. So the parliamentary form of government constitutes another important aspect of the Indian Constitution. Now basically, if we see what constitutes or what defines the parliamentary nature of the government, it simply means that both the executive and legislature, here we are talking specifically with respect to the Indian practice. So here is executive and legislature both acts in the coordination and cooperation. But at the same time, legislature has to hold the executive accountable. Also, they need to ensure that accountability of legislature, accountability is basically ensured by the legislature of the executive. This will ensure the governance in the welfare of the people of the India. Then there is again also a principle of collective responsibility, and it is again a very important aspect of the parliamentary form of government. Now what do we mean by the collective responsibility? Collective responsibility simply means the entire council of ministers needs to be responsible for the decision taken by even a single ministry, right? So it is collectively responsible to the Lok Sabha. And broadly we can say that it is, yes, the collective responsibility is towards the parliament, but again what is mentioned in the constitution is the collective responsibility towards the Lok Sabha. Now the next point which we are going to talk about is judicial supremacy and parliamentary sovereignty. Now, actually, the principle of judicial supremacy or the parliamentary sovereignty belongs to the different countries. The judicial supremacy is a practice in the United States of America, while parliamentary sovereignty is a practice which is followed in the Britain. But again, the scenario for the India is certainly a synthesis between both these systems. So basically, what we follow in India is a synthesis between the system which is followed in USA and the system which is followed in the Britain. That's why it is the synthesis. It is the synthesis of judicial supremacy and parliamentary sovereignty which we follow in India. Now, how it is maintained? Actually, judicial supremacy is ensured through the provision for the judicial review under Article 13, Article 32 and Article 226 of the Indian Constitution. Similarly, as it is clearly established by the Keshwananda Bharati judgment that Parliament certainly can amend any part of the Indian Constitution provided it does not change the basic structure of the Indian Constitution. Hence, broadly we can say that yes, sovereignty of the parliament is not an established principle in India because it is always subjected to the judicial review. As an example, we can say the latest bill which was passed recently regarding the appointment of the judges. It was quashed by the judiciary as it said, the Supreme Court basically said that it affects or harms the independence of judiciary, which is certainly a part of the basic structure of Indian Constitution. Another salient feature of Indian Constitution is certainly integrated and independent judiciary. Now we are talking about the judiciary separately because judiciary constitutes one of the three major organs of the state apart from the legislature and the executive. Here, judiciary needs to be independent to ensure that it holds both the executive as well as the legislature responsible towards its activities towards the citizens of India, as well as it ensures proper justice to the citizen of the country. And we have an integrated judiciary which certainly ensures that both the High Court and the Supreme Court is responsible to give voice to the Constitution of India along with giving primacy to the central laws as well as the state laws in India Constitution. Now, the next important feature or the salient feature of Indian Constitution is the presence of the fundamental rights, directive principles of state policy as well as the fundamental duties as a part of the Indian Constitution itself. Now, when we talk about the fundamental rights, there is certainly a provisions with regard to freedom. That is, we have the right to freedom, we have right to equality. Then we have the religious freedom. Then also we have the fundamental right in the form of protection against exploitation and many others. Even talking about the DPSP, they are basically the directives which are given to the state to run basically a welfare state. So, these are directives which are given to the state to basically provide for a welfare state. They are simply a part of the instrument of the instructions which was also there in the Government of India Act 1935, though the nature is totally different. Then the major difference which we see in fundamental rights and the DPSP which is mentioned in the Constitution is that fundamental right is certainly justiciable in nature. Fundamental right is justiciable in nature. While directive principles of state policy is non-justiciable. It is non-justiciable, which simply means that you cannot approach the court in case the state does not give voice to such directive principles which are mentioned in the Constitution. Then post the emergency period, the provision for the fundamental duties were also incorporated in the Indian Constitution by 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act on the recommendations of Swan Singh Committee. On the recommendations of Swan Singh Committee. So basically, when we talk about the fundamental duties, these are the duties which every citizen of the India needs to abide by to ensure that we not only we enjoy our rights, but also we need to perform the duties in a rightful manner to ensure that our nation always move on the path of further advancement. Now, not only the fundamental right, DPSP and fundamental duties, there is also another interesting provisions regarding the emergency in our Indian Constitution. And this again constitutes a salient feature of Indian Constitution, where it provides for three kinds of emergency, and that is national emergency, state emergency, and the financial emergency. Now, when we see the national emergency, which has a provision under Article 352, under Article 352, the emergency, that is national emergency or proclamation of emergency, can be imposed on the grounds of war, external aggression or the armed rebellion. That is war, external aggression, and armed rebellion. Now, when we talk about the state emergency, it can be imposed under Article 356 of the Indian Constitution as well as 365 do provide the ground 2 for the imposing the state emergency, or which we know as the precedent rule. Article 356 clearly states, well, if the governor reports or otherwise to failure to run the government as there has been a breakdown of the constitutional machinery in the state, constitutional machinery breakdown, then certainly Article 356 can be imposed. And again under Article 365, it says that if the state fails to abide by the directives given by the centre, it can also form the ground for the same. Then again we need to move towards the financial emergency. Now financial emergency has been discussed in the Article 360 of the Indian Constitution, which say that if the financial stability of the country is threatened, then certainly this form of emergency can be imposed. Now, post SR Bommai judgment, the imposition of the president rule, which was often done by the central government, has certainly reduced to a larger extent. Now, another interesting feature or the salient feature of Indian Constitution is presence of third tier of government, that is Panchayati Raj institutions and the municipality or the municipal form of government at the local level. And this basically strengthens the grassroots democracy. And this is what was insisted by the Gandhiji when we see the Article 40 of the DPSP of the Indian Constitution, that is organization of the village panchayats. So, Panchayati Raj institution is provided for in the 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act, and the municipality form of government is certainly provided for in the 74th Constitutional Amendment Act. They define the areas where the power and the responsibility has been shifted to the Panchayati Raj institutions and the municipal form of the government. But again, in order for the PRI and the municipalities to function truly as a form of self-government, what we need is a real transfer of 3 F's, that is funds, functions and functionaries. So these are basically the salient features when we tend to discuss about the important issues in the Indian Constitution. Now we can say that Indian Constitution is certainly an organic constitution. Now organic constitution simply means that it is rooted in basically the people. It is rooted in the ground realities of the country itself, and hence to make a constitution work properly even after the years of its formation, what we need is the right people acting in the right spirit. Because this is what B.R. Ambedkar famously said, that even if a good person is manning a bad constitution, he or she can certainly make it work. Thank you and have a good day.